Ladies and gentlemen, our speaker this morning is one of our distinguished alumni, Mr. Creel Price. Creel had launched 8 businesses before he left school and a further 2 at university. Sorry, we slowed you down. At age 25, he then co-founded Blueprint Management Group with just $5,000 in capital, which he grew to 1,000 staff and sold a decade later for $109 million. Since then, Creel has dedicated his time to fostering entrepreneurship on a global scale through his startup generator, Investable, and founding the Club Kidpreneur Foundation that has helped 10,000 8 to 12-year-olds launch their own micro-enterprises. Sir Richard Branson described Creel as the living, breathing definition of an entrepreneur in his book, and then he was recently recognized as the 17th coolest person in Australia tech by Business Insider. I hope we hear more about that. I have much pleasure in inviting Mr. Price to address the congregation.
Well, let me start by, first of all, acknowledging the Chancellor, Professor the Honourable Gareth Evans, and the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Brian Smith, and of course for congratulating and welcoming the graduating class of 2016, and your friends and family that have come from all around Australia and around the world to be here with us today. Being invited to address you was both an incredible honour for me, and I think was probably an incredible shock to my uni mates and my past lecturers, given the only acclaim I had at university was for stealing the 10-foot high Parliament House sign from State Circle in order to help Johns win the university scavenger hunt. The notoriety for which the following year we increased the stakes and decided that anyone who had a 21st birthday party, we would present them with a Canberran sign with their name on it, which was when I came face to face with the ANU motto, Naturam Primum Cogniscere Rerum. I'm sure I got that wrong, but it's to be the first to learn the nature of things. And so one freezing Canberra morning, a fellow college alumni and I, we were apprehended by 2 federal police, caught red-handed with Guy Place. And for our sins, we were made to search through a very frozen patch of lawn for the discarded nuts and bolts, and ended up with some serious, pretty close to frostbite after searching for an hour. And I think not only did I become the first to learn the nature of things that night, literally, it was the end of both my checkered career as a sign kleptomaniac, but it's when I started to realise that I needed to get serious. So given that you're about to embark on this next phase of your career, I decided to share with you a little bit of frostbite of my own that I've entitled The 4 Things That No Graduate Wants to Hear. And I want to kick off with a bit of advice that I learnt just after graduating. I asked my great uncle Gus, who was the only person in my extended family who had achieved much in the corporate world. He became an executive of CSR. And I said, Uncle Gus, what's the secret to getting ahead in your career? And he said, do the jobs that no one else wants to do. Do the jobs that no one else wants to do. Which of course was advice I intended not to heed, only that back in 1992, coming out as an accounting graduate was probably the worst time in the last 30 years to have an accounting degree. And I've still got a pile of 150 rejection letters from many of the larger accounting firms from around the country with a thanks but no thanks. And I was forced to take a job as a lowly paid and lowly esteemed finance sales executive that I really thought was beneath me, and I wasn't going to get to practice those new skills that I'd learnt trying to work out how I was going to hedge stocks using the Black-Scholes formula. Instead, I was on the phone talking to customers. As it turns out, I had a particular knack for doing that, and I, within 6 months, became the company's #1 salesperson. I was then awarded to become the youngest branch manager in the country. It took me a long while to realise, but I was doing the jobs that no one else wanted to do, and it was a success strategy. Matt, my fellow sign kleptomaniac, the only job that he could get was a lowly managerial cadetship with an ice cream franchise that had him cleaning toilets nearly half of his time. But he came on to, over a decade later, to become a CEO of a publicly listed company. Doing the jobs that no one else wants to do can and probably is a success strategy. It's also a success strategy for entrepreneurship. Rarely the best business ideas are the latest fad or the thing that everyone wants to do. Oftentimes they're the things that no one else wants to do, is where the real gold is. So if you aren't one of those students that gets that perfect opportunity, that gets that great graduate program, have confidence that at least doing the things that no one else wants to do is going to get you ahead. The second piece of advice I've got that you don't want to hear is not to peak too late. Those of you who've been cruising at university, doesn't sound like many of you have, but stop cruising. This is your time. I learnt that lesson climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. It's a pretty interesting mountain, Kili. It's not only the highest mountain in Africa, it's actually the tallest freestanding mountain in the world. And I'm halfway up the mountain, I'm feeling pretty demotivated. So my climbing buddy hands me Sir Richard Branson's biography, Losing My Virginity. And reading his tales of entrepreneurial adventure, how he'd left school at the age of 15 and started the Virgin Empire, I got re-inspired and I decided to come back to Australia. I threw $5,000 in with my business partner Trevor and we founded Blueprint Management Group with probably what could be considered more hope than promise. But over the next 10 years we became one of Australia's fastest growing businesses, and in 2008 we ended up exiting just a week before Bear Stearns crumbled. Literally the defining moment of the global financial crisis. If we had have peaked literally a week later, we probably would have gone home empty-handed. Don't peak too late. And I think what you need to actually understand is that I think looking back at my career, at the stage and age that I am now, I don't think I could have gone through all of those tough times in business. Mountaineers that peak too late die. People that peak too late in their career, one of two things usually happens. Either life takes over and their career might stall a little bit, or worse still, the career takes over and you don't have as much time to spend with your family or your loved ones or your kids later on in life. Now is your time, so you need to seize that opportunity. The third piece of advice that no graduate wants to hear is that your learning has only just begun. Most employers think that you don't know much at all, which is a real catch-22. You need a job to get experience, but you need experience to get a job. I remember after our business had started to get a bit of traction and we splurged out on this European sailing yacht, my business partner and I, and we didn't know how to sail. So a couple of trips around the harbour, we thought we was good enough to head out the heads, and I followed the Sydney to Hobart fleet down the Australian coast, which was pretty naive. And in fact, I got into a mid-sea disaster that the Coast Guard was called in. And it wasn't until later that a commander mate of mine said, Krill, you've got to realise that you can learn to sail, but it takes years and years at sea to be a seaman. And I think that's what we've got to realise, that we're at the start of our journey. Every opportunity is a learning opportunity. There's a statement we use in the innovation world that I participate in now called FLEARN, learning through failure. Club Kidpreneur, the foundation I set up nearly 10 years ago, has been over 10,000 kids that have created a micro-enterprise through that program. And more than them learning about profit and loss or pricing or marketing, it's been the unintended consequence that they've actually learnt some really amazing soft skills. The resilience, the drive, the teamwork, the imagination, the initiative. And they're the skills that I think you guys need to start to embrace. In order to be more employable, treat every single opportunity that you have as a potential life lesson. There is no such thing as a career path anymore. It's really a career portfolio. Start to think about how you can get a little bit of learning, to be the first to learn the nature of things out of every single opportunity that you've got. Which leads me to the fourth and final pieces of advice I've got for any graduate doesn't want to hear, which is, as Claudia said, your university days are the best days of your life. Which, to hear that on today of all days, is pretty sad. All of a sudden, this parallel universe that you've been used to has become into an abrupt end. So there's not much more to do about it than to cherish the memories, to cherish the learnings, to cherish the friendships more than anything. But if you think about it, The world is now so much more global. You're very fortunate to be getting a piece of paper from now the #1 university in Australia. A piece of paper from the 25th most esteemed university in the world and one of the most international. Because commerce is conducted on a global scale, you need to think of not just your friends group, you need to think of your alumni and say, how do we do business together in the future? Your network is probably one of your biggest assets. How do you leverage that? But leveraging a network is not about what do you get out of it. To get what you want, you need to help others get what they want. When I came out in 1992, we weren't as fortunate to have such a great alumni program that they have these days. There was not even any mobile phones. It was actually a time that was BF, before Facebook. So keeping in contact with our graduate class wasn't easy, but we now have a really tight group of friends from 24 years ago that we not only reminisce about the amazing memories from being at John 23rd College and this amazing university, but we're there to get each other's backs. And I think that's what you guys need to start to think about. How can you do that for each other? Amid all of these lessons that you don't want to hear, there is a silver lining, because a career that's hard fought is so much more memorable and so much more satisfying than one that was handed to you on a silver platter. I want to finish by sharing with you a quote that we had from one of our company values that we had up next to our climbing wall in our office, pride of place, to remind us. The company value was called mountainous success. The more obstacles conquered, the more inspiring the view. Strive for greatness. Thank you.